My name is Chen Yi, and I live in a small and broken place called Qingfeng Village, on the edge of Elsace. The village is not big, with hundreds of people, and my life is dull. The biggest joy is to hear the old man at the entrance of the village telling stories about the power of light and darkness, saying that magic crystals can save the world, and I heard my ears all over my ears. Who believes it? There are not even a similar iron craftsman in our broken village. Where are the heroes and legends? That morning, I went up the mountain with my hatchet and chopped wood, ready to come back and change some food. As soon as I walked halfway up the mountain, a scream suddenly came from a distance, followed by an explosion, and the smoke rushed into the sky from the direction of the village. My heart was tightened and I ran back without even holding the hatchet. When I reached the entrance of the village panting, the scene in front of me made me stunned. The village was burning into a sea of fire, the roof collapsed halfway, and the villagers hugged their heads and cried without any hesitation. Chen Yi! Run! It's the Dark Army! The uncle next door yelled at me with his throat. His face was covered in black and gray, and his arms were still bleeding. My brain buzzed. Dark Army? Isn't it something in the news? Why did we really come to this place where birds don't poop? Before I could react, several men wearing black iron armor slammed over. The long spear in my hands flashed with cold light. The small head with its head filled its face, and shouted in my mouth, "No one left, the light will shine." When I saw this strut, my legs were soft, but when I saw the villagers around me fell down, my heart was filled with fire. Run? Running fart. This is my home. I picked up a broken wooden stick on the ground with my hand and smashed it with the black armored soldier recently. Go to your big guy. I shouted, and the wooden stick hit his brain directly. With a click, the guy fell to the ground. But the next second, my companion next to me stabbed me with a long spear. I crawled and hid, and there was still a hole on my back, which made me grit my teeth in pain. Boy, I'm looking for death. The little head stared at me, his voice cold like a sharpening knife. He raised his hand, and a black fog appeared in his palm, rushing straight into my face. I thought to myself that this time is over. I can't even hide, so I can't wait to die. But at this moment, the ground under my feet suddenly shook. I lowered my head and saw a golden light coming from the ground, which was dazzlingly bright. My brain was confused. What's this thing? Before I could figure it out, the light suddenly swelled up and wrapped me up. The black fog hit the golden light and was instantly opened, turning into a green smoke. The little head's face changed and he shouted, "What kind of ghost thing is this?" I was also confused. I lowered my head and saw that there was a piece of crystal as big as a fist in the palm of my hand. It was transparent, and there was a golden light flowing in it, warm, as if I was alive. Is this the magic crystal in the past? I murmured, my heart beat as fast as a drum. The next second, a heat flowed from the crystal diamond into my body, instantly flowing throughout my body. I felt that my body was full of strength, and my feet were so fast that I could not bear it. The little head saw the state, and his face became even more difficult to see. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Kill him! Don't let him live!" Several black-armored soldiers rushed up, and their long spear and sword greeted me. I instinctively raised my hand, and the crystal light shone brightly, and a golden wave of light burst out directly from my palm. With a bang, all the black-armored soldiers were blown away and they could not even get up when they hit the ground. I was so stupid. What was going on? Am I Superman? Missing. Little Head's eyes were so green. He waved his hand and the black fog on his body stormed into a huge black snake, and bit it at me with his mouth. My heart swelled, clenched the crystal, and punched the black snake. The golden light burst out again, tearing the black snake into pieces, and Baibua directly flew over 10 meters of small heads into a pile of ruins, without any silence for a long time. The villagers around were stunned and their crying stopped. The uncle next door asked in a voice, "Chen Yi, what's wrong with you? Why did you get so bad?" I also fogged myself, looked down at the crystal in my hand, muttering in my heart, "How did you choose me for this thing? I'm just a chopping wood." At this time, a figure crawled out of the ruins, which was the small head. Blood was hanging from the corner of his mouth, and he stared at me fiercely. "Boy, you're leaving. When our army arrives, you don't want to live, one of you." After speaking, he limped and ran away with the soldiers, and his eyes disappeared into the smoke. I let out a breath and my legs were soft, and I almost sat on the ground. The villagers came back to their senses and asked in a lingering voice, "Chen Yi, what's wrong with you? What's this crystal?" I smiled bitterly and slammed, "How could I know? It just popped up from the soil, and then, that's it." As he was speaking, a young man in a gray robe walked up to the entrance of the village, wearing a pair of old-fashioned glasses, with a gentle temperament, but his eyes were particularly sharp. He glanced at me, his eyes locked directly on the crystal, and he opened his mouth and asked, "Who are you?" I was stunned and replied without any worries, "Who are you?" "Ask Dong, what are you doing?" He pushed the glass and smiled faintly, "My name is Ziyuan, who is studying ancient magic. I just felt that power through a few places. What you have in your hand is probably the magic crystal in the word, the source of the power of light." "The power of light?" I slapped my head, but my brain had not turned over yet. Chichio took a few steps and said in a low voice, "Simply put, this thing can fight against the Dark Army and is the key to saving the world. But you just used it and have exposed your position. The Dark Army will not let you go, let alone let go of this village." My heart sank. I looked at the devastated village around me. There were also villagers who were terrified and gritted their teeth and asked, "What should I do? Just wait for them to come back and kill us?" Ziyuan shook his head, his eyes became calm. "No, you have to leave here and take the crystal to find the lost map fragments and gather them to truly awaken the power of the crystal and eventually rule the darkness." "Are you finally dark?" My heart beat a little faster. I heard it was so awesome, but I am just an ordinary person. As if seeing through my thoughts, Ziyuan patted my shoulder, "You just fucked that little head and were no longer an ordinary person. Crystal chose you, you are the son of light, the hope of Elsa." I heard this and felt it was so hot that I felt it was not reliable. I hesitated for a moment and asked, "Then how do you know so much?" "Go with me?" Ziyuan pointed out, "Of course, I have research on magic and can help you unlock the potential of crystals. Besides, the Dark Army will revive Su, and the mainland will sooner or later fall, and it will be useless to hide." I lowered my head and looked at the crystal in my hand. The golden light was still flashing slightly, as if urging me to make a decision. The uncle in the village suddenly opened his mouth, "Chen Yi, go. Our village cannot be destroyed in vain, you have to avenge us." The other villagers were also worried, with expectations in their eyes. I gritted my teeth and felt a slight in my heart. "Well, since Crystal has chosen me, I'll try it." "At worst, you can try it, it's better to sit and wait to die." "Okay, I have a long ambition, let's go." "But let's talk first, I don't have much experience, don't expect me to be too bad," I said half-jokingly. Ziyuan smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm here, I won't die. Our first stop is to go to the Flame Mountain to hear the whereabouts of the first map fragment." He turned around and walked out of the village, his steps were quite stable. I looked back at the village that was almost burnt, and my heart was filled with scent. From today on, I am no longer the guy who chops wood. Holding the crystal in my hand tightly, I strode to the far away, and there was only one thought in my brain, Dark Army, let's take a look. Xi and I left Qingfeng village, and we rushed towards the Flame Mountain without looking back. On the way, Ziyuan and I have popularized a lot of science about magic crystals. They said that this thing is the core of light in Elsa. They sealed the dark force 1,000 years ago. Now that the Dark Army is reviving Su, Crystal is the only hope. He also said that there are 5 pieces of lost map fragments, scattered in various dangerous places in the mainland. Only when they gather together can they find the Temple of Lost and awaken the ultimate power of the crystal. Extreme power? It sounds so awesome. Why can this crystal only emit light waves or something now? I walked around and asked, playing with the golden flash crystal in my hand. Ziyuan pushed the lens and said calmly, the power of the crystal has something to do with the holder's mind. You are a novice now, so it's good to use light waves. When you get through more, the potential will naturally be stimulated. I curled my lips and thought to myself, why did this sound like a fool? But thinking about the feeling of punching the black snake in the village, it was really good, so I didn't ask much and buried my head and stumbled. The Flame Mountain is not far away from our village, but the territory is steep and the mountains are covered with black and red rocks. There is a smell of sulfur in the air, which makes me sweat heavily. Ziyuan was quite calm, walking in front, holding a broken notebook in his hand, looking through it with his head down from time to time. Hey, Ziyuan, are you sure the map fragments are here? There are no figures in this broken place, how can I find them? I wiped my sweat and couldn't help but complain. Ziyuan didn't raise his head and walked along and said, according to ancient books, the first fragment was sealed in an ancient magical courtyard deep in the mountain. The specific position must be based on the magical sense. Does the crystal in your hand react? I looked down at the crystal, but it was still the same. Occasionally, the golden light flashed a few times, and there was no reaction. I shook my head, there is no silence, I probably haven't been to the place yet. Ziyuan whined and continued to lead the way, but I always felt that the atmosphere around me was a little unmatched. When the wind blew, I could hear some strange sounds, like someone was talking in a low voice. After walking for most of the day, we finally arrived at a huge valley with scorched stones at the bottom, and a strange stone platform in the middle, filled with runes that we couldn't understand, and a blue glimmer was emitting. Ziyuan's eyes lit up and he closed the notebook. That's it. This is an ancient magical yard, and 80% of the fragments are inside. I looked over and saw that the air around the stone platform was distorted, as if there was an invisible barrier. I reached out and wanted to touch it, but Ziyuan grabbed me. Don't come around, this magic has a protective mechanism, and it will be rolled into scum. I have to crack it first. As he said, he squatted down and began to study the runes, his fingers plotted in the air, and his mouth was still lying. I stood beside me and was bored. I rolled the stone with my hands and threw it to play, but I threw it 2 times, and suddenly there was a chill behind me. I turned around suddenly, but I didn't see anything, only the wind in the valley was shaking. I was just worried in my heart, and a sneer suddenly came from my ears, son of light? Ha, it turns out that I am a hairy boy. The sound was as cold as a knife to scrape the bones. I felt tight and held the crystal and shouted, who? Come out. As soon as the voice fell, several black shadows suddenly appeared behind the rocks around the valley. They were wearing tight black clothes, covered with a mask on their faces, and holding a knife and a short crossbow in their hands. They were moving as fast as ghosts. The head-shaped person with a tall figure, with a murderous look in his eyes, and a low voice, on the order of Lord Gaoxiang, I will take your life and hand over the magic crystal. Gaoxiang? The head of the Dark Army? As soon as my brain turned, Lima responded, and this helper was implicating me. Ziyuan also stood up at this time and said with a brow, the elite assassin group, the sharp knife team of the Dark Army, are specializing in the silence. It seems that they have set their sights on us long ago. Although he was calm, his hand had already touched a small stone plate on his waist, as if he was preparing to move. Stop talking, do it! The assassin said with a command, and several black shadows instantly swept over, so fast that my eyes couldn't keep up. I instinctively lifted the crystal, and the golden light burst out, and a wave of light swept over, but these guys were so strange that they could dodge easily and greeted me directly with a knife. I kept busy with my face, and my hair was cut off a few pieces, which made me sweat. Ziyuan, help me! I hid and shouted, and Ziyuan gritted his teeth and said, I have to focus on cracking the magic and hold them. The stone plate in his hand lit up, and a blue aperture rose from the ground, barely squeezing the attack of the 2 assassins, but the others still headed straight for me. My heart is my gangster, what kind of teammates? I will lose the chain when I get the key. An assassin's short crossbow aimed at me, and the arrow shot towards me with black air. I reluctantly used the light wave to hold it, but another guy took advantage of the opportunity to approach and stabbed my chest with a knife. I couldn't react at all, and I was about to be stabbed and I was desperate. But at this moment, the crystal in my hand suddenly trembled violently, and an unprecedented heat flowed into my body. My brain seemed to explode, and a pile of golden runes flashed in front of me. "Go to your big guy!" I roared subconsciously, grabbed the crystal and slammed forward. The golden light instantly condensed into a huge light drama, and slashed the assassin, and everyone threw a knife into the rock wall, and stopped moving. I was so stupid. What's this thing? Light drama? Why did you suddenly get this trick? New ability? Ziyuan glanced at me and said in surprise, "It seems that crystal is igniting your potential in the life and death. Don't be stunned and continue." I returned to my senses, and my confidence increased greatly, and I shook the light and rushed towards other assassins. The power of this snare was amazing. Once it was slashed, it was a golden snare. Although the assassins had a fast body movement, they had to lie down after being hit. They were fucked 3 times by me in a short while. But the assassin's head was not a vegetarian. He snorted coldly, and a black fog appeared from the knife in his hand, turning into a black chain, directly snatching my slap and pulling me over. My foot slipped down and almost fell down. He kicked it over and hit my chest. I flew out a few meters in my body, and it was so painful that I couldn't breathe, and the slim in my hand almost dissipated. Boy, even with this ability, dare to fight against the Dark Army? The head leader walked over with a sneer. The chain became tighter and tighter. I felt that my arms were almost shut, and even crystal could not hold it. Ziyuan finally opened his mouth at this time. "Chen Yi, hold on, the magic will be broken." I gritted my teeth and swore hard, but I was wondering in my heart, breaking your head, I really want to fall if I don't come again. At this moment, the blue light on the stone platform suddenly flourished, and a sound of crispness broke and opened, revealing a small piece of stone scattered with faint golden light, which was the map fragment. Ziyuan was happy, quickly lifted up the fragments, turned his head and shouted to me, "Chen Yi," then. He suddenly threw a group of blue lights over and directly integrated into my body. I felt the strength of my whole body turbulent, and the light rays became brighter, and it directly wiped out the chain. "Looking for death?" I roared angrily, and the light sword blew, and the sword directly tore through the air, forcing the head to retreat a few steps. His face changed and he gritted his teeth and said, "You're leaving, let you go today." After speaking, he swung his hand and quickly retreated with the remaining assassins, turning his eyes and disappeared outside the valley. I gasped and half knelt on the ground. The light slab slowly dissipated, and my body seemed to be disbanded. Ziyuan walked over and sent me the map fragment, saying, "I got the first one, Chen Yi, you've been fucked well. This scribble is an advanced crystal performance, which shows that you have a deeper connection with it." I took the fragment and smiled bitterly. It's quite good to be advanced, but it's almost lifeless. Why are these assassins so strong? Ziyuan shook his head. There are countless elites under Gao Xiang, this is just an appetizer. Next, it will be even more difficult. We have to find a safe place to study this fragment. I clicked and stood up. A low voice suddenly came from the deep valley, "Young man, come here." Ziyun and I were both stunned when we saw each other. The sound is gentle and powerful, as if it is transmitted from a very far place. I held the crystal tightly and walked carefully towards the sound. After walking through several huge rocks, a secret cave appeared in front of me. At the entrance was an old man in a long white robe, full of silver hair, and his eyes were as deep as if he could see through everything. "Who are you?" I asked vigilantly. My hand was already on the crystal. The old man smiled slightly, and his voice was calm. "My name is Lan Xian, the magician who resides here. I have seen the battle just now. You are the son of light and the holder of the magic crystal, right?" I was stunned. Unexpectedly, she recognized it at a glance and said, "Yes, my name is Chen Yi, this is Chen. We are looking for map fragments." Lan Xian pointed her head, glanced over the crystals and fragments in my hand, and said, "The crystal has chosen you to show that you are qualified to undertake the mission of this battle. But your strength is still too weak to fully grasp it. I can teach you the magic of light and magic and help you improve your strength, but you must pass my experiment. Try it." I raised my eyebrows and felt that there was a pit in this old lady's words. Ziyuan pushed the lens and said in a low voice, "I have seen the name Lan Xian in ancient books. She is a great magician in the publication and is proficient in light magic. If she is willing to help, we will make progress very quickly." I heard it, and I felt a little nervous and said, "Okay, what's the point, tell me." Lan Xian smiled and waved her hand. A white light lit up in the cave, and there was a huge magical ambient visible inside. She said lightly, "Go in. Through the magical instrument test, I will teach you advanced skills of the blade of light and tell you the whereabouts of the next piece of fragments. But remember, the price of failure is death." My heart skipped a beat. Death? This test is not easy to hear. But looking at the crystals and fragments in my hand, I thought of the wolf that was almost fucked by the assassin. I gritted my teeth and said, "Okay, I'll take it. Isn't it just a trial slap? Come on." Lan Xian pointed at me and signaled me to enter the hole. Ziyuan was waiting outside, with a panic of worry in her eyes. I took a deep breath, held the crystal tightly, and stepped into the cave. The white light wrapped me in an instant, and my eyes were blurred, as if I had fallen into another world. There are floating lights all around, and under the feet is a vast space of space, and you can see a huge light from afar. I thought to myself, what is this trick? Just as I was surprised, the light suddenly condensed into a pile of golden phantoms, holding a weapon, rushing towards me. "Come on!" I screamed, clamped the crystal, and the light slab condensed again, ready to fight. Although these phantoms are virtual, their attack power is not weak, and each strike brings a strong sense of pressure. I gritted my teeth and suffocated, and there was only one thought in my mind: no matter what, I had to pass this test, become stronger, and then step on the dark army under my feet. When I walked out of Lan Xian's magical instrument, I felt like I was falling apart, sweating heavily, and my clothes were soaked in sweat. Those golden phantoms are not jokes, each one is the same as the real one, and the moves are deadly. If it weren't for the crystal's rays, I would have been disappointed long ago. Finally, I found a doorway and used the light slab to condense a large range of light explosions to clear all the phantoms. Only then did the light door open and let me pass through. Lan Xian stood at the entrance of the cave and saw me coming out, showing a satisfied expression on her face. "It's good, her willpower is stronger than I thought. I will teach you the advanced skills of the blade of light." She slammed her hand, and a white light dripped into my brain, and there was a bunch of complicated runes and mouths in an instant, as if she was directly engraved into her memory. I tried to move, and the erectus in my hand became more solid. A layer of jumping light was still surging on the sword, and its power was obviously increased by a huge margin. This move is called Light Flame, which can burn the power of darkness, remember it, and use it at all times. Lan Xian's words were calm, but there was a deep meaning in her eyes that could not be expressed. She then gave me a broken sheepskin paper with a bunch of snaking lines, like maps. "This is the route to the dark forest, and the second map fragment is there, but be careful, the Dark Army's men have begun to defend." I followed the map and felt a little hairy in my heart. I have heard of the name of the Dark Forest. It is said to be a ghost place. The trees are so dense that the light cannot penetrate. There are still monsters and poisonous fogs. Ordinary people will most likely not come out if they go in. Ziyuan walked over at this time, pushed his eyes and said, "The Dark Forest is a Dark Force outpost, which is indeed dangerous, but we don't have to choose. The fragments must be obtained." I gritted my teeth and pointed, "Okay, then let's go." "Lanqin, aren't you with us?" Lan Xian shook her head and said lightly, "My mission is to protect this mountain and cannot leave. Be careful yourself. If there is any evil, we will see you again." After saying that, she turned around and walked into the cave, and her back quickly disappeared into the darkness. Ziyuan and I looked at each other, and without saying much, we packed up our things and set off towards the dark forest according to the route on the map. After walking on the road for 2 days, the earth became lower and lower, and the air became damp and cold. The trees and forests far away were covered with black pressure, like Zhang Kai's big mouth waiting to swallow people. As I was about to get to the edge of the forest, Ziyuan suddenly stopped and said in a low voice, "There is a silence, there is someone in front of me." I was stunned, holding the crystal tightly, and quietly sank. Looking through the bushes, there were indeed several figures wandering around the forest, wearing broken leather armor, holding bows and arrows and short swords in my hands, sneaking, as if they were ambushing. "The Dark Army?" I asked in a low voice. Ziyuan shook his head. "Unlike, their equipment is too broken. They should be locals, maybe they are rebels." I heard it, and I felt a little moved. Rebels? I heard that this helper was a special match against the Dark Army, but I didn't expect it to happen. I was about to look at it again, when one of the people suddenly turned around, his eyes locked in the place where we were hiding, and shouted in a deep voice, "Who is there? Come out." "Been discovered." Ziyuan and I looked at each other, then stood up and started to show that we were not interested. I opened my mouth. "Don't misunderstand, we are not enemies. My name is Chen Yi, this is the long distance of the aspirations. We are looking for something." The man looked up and down at us, his eyes still with vigilance. Several companions around him also surrounded him, and he did not put down his weapons. The one on the head was a woman with dark skin and a scar on her face, and she was quite angry. She asked coldly, "What are you looking for? The dark forest is not a place to visit. Tell me clearly, otherwise don't blame us for being rude." I hesitated for a moment, and felt that it was useless to hide it, so I simply showed the crystal in my hand. The golden light flashed, and several people's eyes were straightened. The woman's expression changed and she said in surprise, "This is a magic crystal? Are you the Son of Light?" I pointed, "Yes, we are looking for fragments of the lost map and preparing to fight against the Dark Army. Are you resisting troops?" She heard, her face calmed down, put down her weapon, and said, "I am Yang Hui, the leader of this team. We are indeed rebels, playing in this forest, and blocking the sentinels of the Dark Army. Since you are the Son of Light, we are our own people." She put on her head with her eyes, it became solemn, "But I have to remind you that the Dark Forest is now very dangerous. The Dark Army is gathering troops to prepare to destroy the final point of the Light campaign. They built an outpost ahead, and there is also a dark magic tower that spreads poisonous fogs. Our people are very detrimental." "Dark magic tower?" Ziyuan interrupted. "The magic tower that can control poisonous fog should be the masterpiece of Gao Xiang's wizard. It has strong destruction." Xihui pointed and gritted her teeth and said, "Yes, that thing is not bad. We can't go deep into the forest at all, let alone look for any fragments." I heard it and felt aroused in my heart. Looking at the exhausted team members behind her, I said, "That's it, let's cooperate. Ziyuan and I help you get the magic tower. As an exchange, you will take us into the forest to find fragments. How about it?" Yang Hui was stunned. She obviously didn't expect that I would take the initiative to cooperate. She hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you sure? The tower is surrounded by elites of the Dark Army, and there are wizards sitting in the town, and they are not enough to beat us." I grinned and shook the crystal in my hand. "It's not possible to fight hard, we can steal it. Isn't the Dark Army awesome? Then give them a look." Ziyuan pushed the eyeglass and said in a low voice, "Chen Yi's plan is feasible. The core of the magic tower is the dark crystal. As long as it is destroyed, the tower will be destroyed. I can use magic to interfere with their defense, you are responsible for breaking it." Xihui heard it, her eyes lit up, and she pointed, "Okay, fucked." That night, the night was as dark as ink, and there were low horns everywhere in the forest, and the atmosphere was so stressful that people couldn't breathe. I, Ziyuan and Yang Hui, carried more than a dozen rebels and quietly touched the Dark Army outpost. The outpost was built on a clearing ground beside the forest, surrounded by black armored soldiers. A dark tower stood in the center, with a huge dark crystal on the top, emitting purple-black fog, which made people creepy when they looked away. "It's that thing, the poisonous fog spreads out from the tower. Hui whispered in a low voice, pointing at the tower and said, "There are 3 patrol soldiers around, and 2 wizards guarding the core. We can fight quickly." Ziyuan was staring, and had already started to carve magical foils in his hand, and said in a low voice, "I will first use the interference to destroy their warning boundaries, and fight for you 10 minutes. Chen Yi, you are head-on, and Yang Hui is responsible for covering up." I clicked my head and held the crystal tightly, feeling my heartbeat as fast as a drum. This is my first time raiding in a team. It is fake to say that it is not tight in my heart, but looking at the anticipated look of the soldiers behind me, I gritted my teeth and thought to myself, if I fight, I can't disappoint them. Ziyuan slammed his hand, and a blue aperture quietly spread out without a sound. The air around the outpost was slightly distorted. The patrolmen seemed to have not noticed the abnormality and continued to walk back and forth. "Run!" I shouted softly, my body flashed, and my head rushed out of the forest. The light in my hand instantly condensed, and with its light flames, it slashed straight towards the nearest black-armored soldier. The guy didn't even react, and I slashed his backhand and hit the ground without any silence. Yu Wei and her teammates followed each other out, and the bow and arrow and short sword broke out, and instantly knocked down several enemies, and the scene was in a mess. "Absolutely. Call the police." A black-armored soldier roared and wanted to pull the police bell, but Yang Hui shot an arrow and hit his wrist. He screamed, but the police bell could not be able to rise. I took the trouble toward the magic tower. On the way, 2 wizards were lying on the way, wearing black robes and slapping the staff in my hands, and 2 giant pythons transformed from black fog slammed into my face. A little trick to carve a slight trick. I snorted coldly, and the light slammed, and the light flames exploded. The golden flames directly burned the black fog, and slashed over it. One of the wizards could not hide in time, and was hit by the sword and fell to the ground on the spot. Another wizard's face changed drastically, and he quickly stepped back, chanting a mantra in his mouth, trying to summon more black fogs. But I didn't give him a chance. I walked over a few steps and the light slashed his chest. He screamed and knocked him down. "Chen Yi, top of the tower. Hurry!" Ziyuan's voice came from behind. I looked up and saw that the dark crystal on the top of the tower was shining brightly, and the purple-black fog was gushing out, as if it was angered. My heart was tightened and I knew that if I didn't move, the poisonous fog would be dissipated and we would have to finish it. So I gritted my teeth, rushed my body, and jumped directly onto the top of the tower with the power of the crystal, and fell steadily beside the dark crystal. This thing is even more evil than I thought. When you get close, you can feel a biting chill, as if you want to drill into your bones. I gritted my teeth and held the slate tightly. The crystal was filled with a slight flame. The golden flame slashed hard on it, making a harsh cracking sound. A crack appeared on the crystal surface, but it was not completely broken. The tower body suddenly shook and a group of black-armored soldiers came from below. The leader of the team was full of faces and killed him, yelling, "Boy, you dare to harm our good things, and you are looking for death. I'm afraid you are the ones who are looking for death." I sneered, and a sword swept over the several black-armored soldiers in front, but the team leader was not weak. He picked up the long spear in his hand and forced my attack. The tip of the spear still had black air and stabbed it forward. I hid from my side, and the tip of the spear brushed against my shoulder, and a blood mark appeared, which made me grit my teeth in pain. Son of Light? But that's the case. The captain sneered, his long spear thorned, his moves were cruel, and I was forced to retreat, and my heart was secretly stung. Why is this guy so difficult? At this time, Qinghui's voice came from below, "Chen Yi, then." I looked down and she threw a short dagger up. The cold light flashed. I caught it with my hands. Taking advantage of the gap where the team leader stabbed a spear, the dagger directly stabbed into his shoulder, and blood was sprayed. He screamed in pain, and his attack slowed down. "Go to your big guy." I seized the opportunity, and the light sword slammed him again, and with a blow of light, he directly slashed him on the wall of the tower, and couldn't get up for a long time. Without any obstacles, I turned around and slammed the dark crystal with all my strength. This crack finally expanded. With a loud noise, the crystal shattered, and the purple-black fog instantly dissipated. The entire tower began to sway violently, as if it was about to collapse. "Retreat! Retreat!" I shouted and jumped down from the top of the tower. I almost stood firm when I landed. Ziyuan and Yanhui, carrying the rebels, had cleared most of the enemies. Seeing that the tower began to collapse, the Lima retreated towards the forest. We ran 100 meters and heard a thunderous sound of storm from behind. The magic tower collapsed and turned into a pile of ruins, flying in dust. "It's done!" Yang Hui gasped, her face full of excitement, and the rebels cried out, and someone even pushed me with a thumbs up, "Son of Light, awesome!" I grinned, and my heart felt so happy. Just as the brink of danger was alive, all the fatigue and pain were worth it when the tower fell. Ziyuan walked over and pushed his eyeglasses and said, "Fuck beautifully, Chen Yi." Destroying the magic tower not only eliminates the poisonous fog, but also hits the Dark Army again. They have no way to redefense in a short time. Shihui pointed at the head and added, "This battle has been relieved. We have not been able to resist the army for a long time. Chen Yi, you, the Son of Light, have no name." I held my hand and said, "Don't tell me, it's mainly because everyone cooperated well. But this is just a small move. The Dark Army's big army has not come yet. We have to seize the time to enter the forest and find the fragments." Shihui pointed at her head, with a little respect in her eyes. "Don't worry, with us leading the way, the dark forest can pass by no matter how dangerous it is." After a break, Huhui took us deep into the forest. Along the way were full of trees, with dense branches and moonlight that could not be seen. The surroundings were scary, and only the occasionally strange birds screamed, which made people's skin numb. I held the crystal, ready to face sudden situations at any time, and I was holding the notebook, and I felt the position of fragments from time to time. After walking for the middle of the night, Yang Hui suddenly stopped and said in a low voice, "Is there an abnormality ahead? Is the crystal reacting?" I looked down and the crystal in my hand began to shake slightly, and the golden light was a little brighter than before. I pointed, "If you are static, you shouldn't be far away." Shihui browsed, signaling everyone to be vigilant and strode forward slowly. Before I walked far, a faint green light suddenly appeared deep in the forest. I could see a broken stone platform with a small fragment of glimmering light on it, very similar to the one in the Flame Mountain. I was delighted, but I was not as happy as I was at the same time. The tree beside me suddenly swayed, and several huge black wolves burst out, with green light in their eyes and saliva dripping in their mouths, and their breath was so cruel. The dark wolf pack, the guardians in the forest, the fragments are watched by them. Shihui shouted softly, pulled out the short sword, and prepared to fight. I gritted my teeth, held the light sword tightly, and yelled, "Protect yourself," and handed these beasts over to me. After saying that, I rushed up first, and the flames slashed directly at the black wolf in front. With a flash of golden light, the wolf's head should land, but the other horses rushed over and were astonishingly fast. "Be careful!" Ziyuan shouted and threw out a magical atmosphere, barely holding the wolf's attack. Yan Hui and the rebel army also joined the battle, and the scene was in a mess for a while. I gritted my teeth and squeezed hard. The skeleton danced tightly, but these black wolf had thick skin and flesh. After a few moments, I could still get up. My claws were still black, and it hurt when I scratched my body. "Chen Yi, use light to explode." Xichang suddenly reminded me. My brain lit up. "Yes, let's try the big range skill in the teaser." So I took a deep breath and concentrated my energy. The crystal light burst out, and a powerful force stormed out from my body. I shouted, "Crash me!" The golden light wave exploded with me as the center, and instantly lifted up several black wolves and smashed them on the tree, and couldn't get up. "It's done!" I gasped and rushed to the stone platform, grabbed the fragments, and the crystal lemons formed a co-fish with it, and the golden light became brighter. Shihui walked over and patted my shoulder. "Chen Yi, your strength is truly convinced." With the 2 pieces of fragments, we are one step closer to our goal. I clicked my head, but my heart wasn't that relaxed. The Dark Army's great troops may at any time suppress the territory, and the remaining debris are still scattered in more dangerous places, with increasing pressure. But looking at the Ziyuan and Yanhui around me, and the look of resisting the trust of the soldiers, I gritted my teeth and decided, no matter how difficult it is, I have to continue to rush it. The name of the Son of Light is not a waste of time. Let's go, find a safe place to rest, and then plan the next step. I put away the fragments and walked out of the forest with my head in my arms. The teammates behind me followed closely, and the pace was more stable than before. Dark Army, wait, our account has not been calculated yet. After Ziyuan and Yanhui and I left the dark forest, we didn't dare to stay for a long time. We kept moving towards the location of the next map fragments, the Lost Sea. That place is said to be a strange sea area on the east side of the mainland. It was finally covered by mists and the fragments of the news were sealed in an ancient desert under the sea. On the way, we joined several more rebel troops, and the team grew a lot, but the pressure also came, because the pursuits of the Dark Army were becoming more and more frequent, like a fishy wolf pack, biting us. Fortunately, we have the power of crystal and the magical aura of a long time. Although we were full of injuries every time, we finally won the 3rd and 4th pieces. When the last piece of fragments was dug out from the Sea of Lost, the crystal suddenly shook violently, and the 5 pieces automatically floated in the air, emitting dazzling golden light. Then they actually put together and turned into a complete ancient map with a clear location on it, the Temple of Lost. It's done! This is the way to the temple. Ziyuan pushed the lens, and there was little excitement in his voice. He pointed to a red point on the map and said, "The temple is in the center of the mainland, deep in the ancient ruins. It is said that it is the origin of the battle between light and darkness. The ultimate power of the crystal is there." Shihui also came over and said with a brow, "But this place is too close to the Dark Army's large capital. Gao Xiang must have arranged heavy troops there. We used to be the same as self-submitted to the Ronaldo." I held the crystal and looked down at the red spot on the map, with 5 cents in my heart. I was almost tempted by the days when I licked blood from the knife, but when I thought of facing Gao Xiang, the pressure still made my palms sweat. But when I thought about it, the state of Qingfeng village, the expectations of the villagers, and the companions who fell along the way, I gritted my teeth and said, "What are you afraid of? Isn't it just Gao Xiang? I'll get as much as I come. If we don't enter the temple, the Dark Army will swallow the entire mainland long ago, and it's useless to hide." Jingwei heard it and pointed out, "Okay, with you, we will fight against the army and fight you to the end." Ziyuan added coldly, "According to the map, there is a magic seal at the entrance of the temple. You must first break the boundary before entering. I will prepare the magic square in advance, but the defense of the Dark Army is a tough battle. Chen Yi, your crystal must be on the top." I grinned and said, "Don't worry, I have become more and more compatible with this thing these days, and I will never lose the chain." After saying that, we all formed a good team, carrying dozens of rebel troops, and headed towards the ancient ruins. That place is a barren land, with ice covered with walls and walls. When the wind blows, it brings a biting chill, as if you can hear the sound of the war 1,000 years ago. After walking for 2 days, I finally reached the location of the map mark. There was a huge stone forest in front of me. There was a broken temple in the center, all black, carved with ancient runes, emitting a breath of uneasy. "That's it, the Temple of Lost," Jian said in a low voice, and began to carve the magical garage on the ground, preparing to crack the seal of the entrance. I held the crystal and looked around, feeling like I was being stared at. Wei Hui also realized that it was wrong and arranged for the rebels to disperse and warn the surrounding area. But before he could finish the magic scene, a deep sound of horns suddenly came from far away. Then, a large black armored figure appeared from the shadows around the stone forest, densely packed, with hundreds of people. The long spears and huge shields in their hands were flashing with the cold light, and the pressure made people breathless. The Dark Army's army. Gao Xiang's direct troops. Yang Hui's face changed and she shouted softly, "They've been ambushing, we're shocked." My heart sank. I looked up and saw that the guy on the head was riding a huge black wolf, wearing heavy armor, wearing a mask on his face, and holding a giant axe burning with black flames in his hand. His voice was as cold as ice. "Son of light, hand over the magic crystal, I may be able to keep you all." "Captain, the black flame battle will bring Carlos, Gao Xiang's most capable subordinate, and his strength is unpredictable," Ziyuan quickly whispered in my ears, carrying a tight sound in my voice. I gritted my teeth, held the crystal tightly, and replied sneered, "Want to get the crystal? Come and try it. It depends on whether your brain is hard or my sword." Carlos snorted coldly, lifted up his giant axe, and the troops of the army were divided into several teams, surrounding them from all directions, with a uniform pace like a machine, and the pressure was directly filled with pressure. "Chiao, what's the way the boundary is?" I was ready to start and asked. Ziyuan gritted his teeth and said, "It's still the last step, I'll give me 5 minutes." I clicked and turned around and shouted to Jinghui, "Take people to guard the ground, don't let them get close to Ziyuan." After saying nothing, he quickly launched defense with the rebel army, and the bows and arrows and short swords were out, trying to delay time. But the battle force of the military was far superior to that of ordinary black armored soldiers. When they pushed their shields, the arrows that resisted the military could not break the defense at all. Several bullets approached our defense line. "Looking for death?" I roared angrily, holding the crystal tightened, and the light sliced in an instant, and rushed straight with the light flames. A sword slashed on the shield in the front, and the golden flame burst out, overturning several soldiers. But the people behind stood up and squeezed them up, and a long spear stabbed over. I hurriedly avoided them, but a hole was still cut, and blood was flowing. The rebel army also began to suffer injuries. Some were pierced by long spears and some were smashed by huge shields, and screams came one after another. "Chen Yi, don't fight hard, they have too many people." Xihui slapped the sword and shouted at me. But I know in my heart that retreating now is a dead end, and I can only force myself to force you. I gritted my teeth and danced tightly. With the power of the crystal, I released several light explosions, barely breaking a gap. However, the encirclement of the army was getting smaller and smaller, and the magic area around the continent was not solved, and our situation was becoming more and more dangerous. "Son of light? But it's a clown." Carlos finally moved. He sneered, and the black wolf roared and rushed over. The giant axe slashed hard with black flames. I quickly rolled the slam and slammed it. With a loud bang, the light was almost shattered. I was forced to retreat for a few steps, and the tiger's mouth was shattered. Carlos was desperate, and the giant axe continued to slash, and each hit was filled with destructive power. I could only grit my teeth and force it, and I felt my arms almost slashed. "Chen Yi, hold on!" Ziyuan shouted, and a blue light finally lit up in the magical atmosphere, but Carlos also noticed that with a swing of his hand, several soldiers directly rushed towards Ziyuan and tried to crack it. I was anxious and suddenly burst out a wave of light, forcing the soldiers to fly, but this shot also exhausted my energy. Carlos took advantage of the opportunity to slash over with an axe. I couldn't dodge and my chest was rubbed by black flames. In an instant, it burned black, which made me almost over. "Go to die." Carlos's eyes flashed, his giant axe rose high, and the black flames swelled, as if he was about to split me in 2.5 in the next second. I was half kneeling on the ground, gasping heavily, watching the rebels fall down. Ziyuan was attacked by several soldiers, and Yang Hui was covered in blood and was still fighting to death. A desperate and angry feeling surged in her heart. Is it hard to finish this? No. I can't die. I haven't reported the hatred of Qingfeng village yet, and the hope of the mainland is still in my hands. Let me, open. I roared angrily, holding the crystal tightening, and suddenly flashed the runes and orals taught by Lan Xian in my brain. I felt like I was trying to urge the crystal with all my strength. The golden light instantly stormed, as dazzling as the sun. But it wasn't enough. I felt a deeper force in my body awakening, and it was always so bad, as if I was stuck by something. At this moment, a low chant suddenly came from afar, and then a white light fell from the sky and directly covered me. The warm feeling instantly flowed throughout my body, as if injecting new power into me. I was stunned, and Lan Xian's voice sounded in my ears. Chen Yi, concentrate and break through the limits of crystal. The power of light is with you. It's Lan Xian. She actually supported me with her long magic. With this force, my heart sank, bit my tongue, and focused my mind on the crystal. The stuck force finally exploded. The crystal light shone brightly, and the golden light condensed into a huge light giant. The shadow floated behind me, and the atmosphere was so strong that the soldiers around were stunned. Carlos's face changed and he growled, "What kind of ghost thing is this? This is your big man." I sneered, and the giant of light hit me with a punch, and a big pit was directly knocked out of the ground. Carlos's people were shocked and the giant axe was wiped out. I took advantage of the opportunity to rush over, and the light sword evolved into a giant blade burning with golden flames. With one move, the light sword slashed the air and slashed Carlos's black flame defense. The blade directly penetrated his chest and blood spurted out. How, maybe? Carlos's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief, and he was spitting blood in his mouth, falling down slowly. The black wolf under him wailed and fell to the ground. I gasped and half-kneeled on the ground. The giant light shadow slowly dissipated, and my body seemed to be hollowed out, but when I watched Carlos fall, the feeling of pleasure in my heart burst out. What about the team leader? I've just fucked him. The leader is dead. Retreat. As the military team saw the situation, the soldiers collapsed in an instant, and the remaining soldiers retreated, turning their eyes and running without a trace. The rebel army burst out and shouted, and Yan Hui wiped the blood from her face and gave me a thumbs up. "Chen Yi, you are so fierce. This battle is so good." Ziyuan also relaxed and walked over and patted me on the shoulder. "The extreme power of crystal, I didn't expect you to wake up. The Guardian of Light is the form and the presentation." I stood up with a wry smile, feeling my legs trembling. "Don't be upset, I almost lost my life. Lan Xian's support came too soon, otherwise I would be really cool." Ziyuan pointed, "Her magic spans this far distance, and can provide precise support, and the strength is truly terrifying. However, the boundary has been broken and the entrance to the temple has opened. We have to go in tightly, and the Dark Army will be back at any time." I looked down and saw that a gap had indeed cracked open in the black stone wall at the front of the temple, and a faint golden light shone out from it, as if calling us in. Hui Qing pointed the man's hand and said in a low voice, "We have lost more than 10 brothers, but the rest can still fight. Chen Yi, what should I do after entering? I will listen to you all." I took a deep breath, held the crystal tightly, and said, "Go in and find the ultimate power of the crystal. No matter what you have to guard, just fuck it." Didn't Gao Xiang want to swallow the crystal? Then I'll let him see who is the final winner. The rebels were fighting to the point, their eyes were filled with determination. I stepped into the entrance of the temple with my head, and Ziyuan and Jingwei followed closely, and the stone door behind me closed, blocking the outside voice and killing. Inside the temple is a long corridor, with ancient wall paintings carved on the walls on both sides of the walls, paintings of light and darkness that fought thousands of years ago, each of which is filled with mulberry and tragedy. From the deepest part of the corridor, you can hear a deep sound of the birds, as if something is waiting for us. "Be careful, this place is not simple." I reminded me in a low voice that the light sculpt in my hand would be ready to explode at any time. Ziyuan pushed the eyeglass and said, "The temple is the origin of the crystal. There may be guardians or shadows of dark power. Chen Yi, your crystal is the key, and you can feel its reaction at any time." I clicked and looked down at the crystal in my hand. The golden light was brighter than before, as if I couldn't wait to rush toward a certain place. After walking for about a minute, a huge circular hall appeared in the corridor, with a high-profile sacrificial fortress in the center. On the sacrificial fortress, a group of pure golden light balls floated, emitting a warm breath that would make people feel at ease. My heart beat and I couldn't speak. Is this the ultimate power of crystal? But before I could get close, the ground around the fort suddenly cracked, and several black shadows rose up. A man wearing heavy armor and red light was flashing in his eyes, like an ancient warrior walking out of the wall painting. The guardian of the darkness, the back line of defense of the temple. Ziyuan said in a low voice, and his face became solemn. Chen Yi, these guys are not living things, but shadows condensed by the power of darkness. They must be destroyed all before they can get close to the sacrificial supreme. I gritted my teeth and pointed, okay, come on. Let's go together and open the way for me. After speaking, I rushed forward first, and the light sword slashed at the first black shadow with golden flames, and the battle exploded again. These dark guards are even more difficult than the siege. Each strike is filled with a corrupt black air, and the light slashes will be weakened a few points. I gritted my teeth and squeezed hard. With the crystal power that had just broken through, I barely suppressed one, but other guards attacked at the same time, and the rebels also joined the battle, and the scene was in chaos again. Xiue snatched the sword and shouted, Chen Yi, the quick battle will be decisive. If it is delayed for a long time, it will be unfavorable to us. I knew she was right, but these black images were killed endlessly, one was blown away and another appeared. I was hurting more and more, and my strength was almost exhausted. At this moment, the crystal suddenly shook violently, as if it was feeling the light ball on the fort. My brain lit up and I thought to myself, don't worry, try it. I shouted, long-minded, wise, to cover me up, I will directly swear a sacrifice. Ziyuamama threw out a magical gaze and reluctantly snatched the attacks of several black shadows. He led the rebel army to intercept them desperately. I took the trouble and rushed to the fortress, reaching out to the ball of light. Just as my fingertips touched the ball of light, an unmatched force surged into my body, and the crystal light radiated. My consciousness seemed to be pulled into a golden world, and a low voice echoed in my ears, Son of Light, you have already passed the test, inherit my will, and finally get dark. When I returned to my senses, my body was wrapped in golden light, and the light slab evolved into a true blade of light, with a power of more than 10 times stronger than before. I turned around and my breath swept across the entire hall. All the dark guardians were torn apart in an instant, turning into black fog and dissipating. The rebels were stunned and Yang Hui murmured, Chen Yi, are you become a god? I grinned, feeling full of strength, and said, I'm not yet, but I'm not far away from Gao Xiang's brain. Let's go, the army of the Dark Army is coming soon. Let's go out and prepare for a battle. The ambition was too high, with expectations in his eyes, the ultimate strength is finally obtained, Gao Xiang's doomsday is no longer far. We calmed down and walked out of the temple with full of injuries and anger, ready to meet the final challenge. Dark Army, wait, our account should be calculated clearly. The moment I received the golden ball of light from the fortress of the Lost Temple, I felt that the whole person had been reshaped, and the power inside the body was gushing wildly. The light of the magic crystal was as bright as a small sun, and it was numb when held in my hand. The blade of light that evolved was covered with golden flames on the body of the sword, and at once it was a sword that could tear the air. It just emptied those dark guardians in one move, which made my heart feel so happy. Is this the ultimate power of crystal? Too fierce. But I didn't have time to sigh. A shocking sound came from outside the Lost Temple, followed by the dense footsteps and metal collisions, as if thousands of troops and thousands of horses were coming here. As soon as Yang Hui's face changed, she rushed to the entrance of the temple and looked out, and turned around and shouted, Chen Yi, it's not good. The Dark Army has arrived, and the number is too large. It's probably Gao Xiang's team. Ziyuan pushed the lens and said in a deep voice, the power wave of the temple is too strong, they must have felt it. We have to be on guard, otherwise it will be over if we are surrounded. I gritted my teeth, held the blade of light tightly, and said, what are you afraid of? How much do you come? We have the resistance army and the power of crystal, and it may not be possible to fight head-on. After speaking, I led my head out of the temple, and the resistance army followed closely, with a determined look on my face. Although I was injured, my military aura was extremely high. As soon as I left the entrance of the temple, the scene that was reflected in my eyes made my heart tighten. In the stone forest of the ancient ruins, the black pressure was covered with soldiers from the Dark Army, with thousands of people, black armor flashing with cold light, long spears and giant shields formed a series of defense lines, and there was also a team of elite soldiers riding Black Wolf in the center, as if they were about to swallow us alive. The most eye-catching thing is a figure standing at the forefront of the army. The guy was more than 2 meters tall, wearing a dark red armor with a skeleton, a black fog on his body, and a giant sword burning with black flames in his hand. His eyes behind the mask were full of slaughter, and just looking at it made people's calves soft. Xihui said in a low voice, "Gao Xiang, the supreme sect of the Dark Army, the incarnation of the power of destruction. This guy is coming here, we are so irritated." I swallowed, my heart beat as fast as a drum, but my mouth was still hard. Is so irritated? Today I want to see how many pounds of his power of destruction are. Prepare for the battle, I yelled, and the rebels quickly dispersed and occupied the favorable terrain around the temple. Jingwei was ambushed by the stone forest with archers. Ziyuan quickly carved magical spaces on the ground and tried to draw a defense boundary. I stood in front, holding the blade of light, and felt the heat flow of crystal flowing wildly in my body, as if urging me to rush to fuck me. But I also knew that this battle was not a small fight, but the number of people we faced was more than 10 times that of us, and we had to fight with strategy. Shoot the arrow. With a command from Xihui, the archers who resisted the army took the lead in launching an attack. The arrows shot towards the front row of the Dark Army like rain. However, the opponent's shield was too thick, and most of the arrows were knocked down. Only a few shots hit the gap, killing several black-armored soldiers. Gao Xiang snorted coldly, and a huge sword in his hand slammed, and a black sword directly tore through the air, forcibly shattering several stones, and was affected by several resistance troops, and fell down with a cry. My heart sank. This guy was so powerful with just one move. Is it okay to start with it? Yuan, what's the way the boundary is? I was alert to the other party's movement and asked that. Looking for death. Gao Xiang's eyes flashed with anger. With a huge sword, dozens of elite soldiers riding Black Wolf rushed over, and their wolf claws and long spears rushed straight to my face. I sneered, the blade of light continued to storm, the sword was as angry as a rainbow, a rifle was overturned, and the wailing sounds of the Black Wolf came one after another. But these guys were too many, killing one after another, and I was quickly surrounded. I was hit by a few times, my wounds were sore, and my blood was flowing down my arms. Chen Yi, come back. Xihui shouted to bring people to support, and the arrows and short swords were rushing out, helping me to relieve myself. I gasped and retreated into the boundary area. At this time, Ziyuan finally completed the magical ambushes. A blue light curtain rose, holding the Dark Army slamming, and the shield hit the light curtain and made a harsh sound, which was temporarily stopped. I wiped my sweat and gritted my teeth and said, "How long can this boundary last?" Ziyuan shook his head. At most 10 minutes, if Gao Xiang takes action, the time will be shortened. We have to find a way to counterattack, otherwise the entire army will be defeated. I pointed, looked at the dark and pressured army in Gao Xiang's cold eyes, and felt a twitch in my heart, saying, resistance is a must, but it is not possible to fight hard. Ambition and wisdom, do you have any way to make trouble for their appearance? I took someone in, aiming directly at Gao Xiang, and fuck him, the army will naturally collapse. Jingwei's eyebrows said, straightly at Gao Xiang? Too, he was full of difficulties, and we were not alone. Ziyuan pushed his eyes and said in a deep voice, there is a way. There is a core method in the temple that can induce a large-scale attack of the power of light. If I work with Yue to crack it, it may be able to recreate the Dark Army and create an opportunity for you. But cracking it takes time, you have to hold Gao Xiang. Drag it. I gritted my teeth and felt the heat and blood on my chest burn again. You go to the temple to get the battle. I'm on the top of my head. No matter what, I'll fight for time. Ziyuan and Yanhui glanced at each other and pointed, okay, hand it over to us. After saying that, the man quickly retreated back to the inside of the temple with several rebels. I took the rest of the people to guard the boundary and prepare for the next wave of attacks. Break! Gao Xiang finally moved. He shouted coldly. The giant sword slashed hard on the boundary with black flames. A crack appeared in the blue light curtain instantly and was shattered in a few seconds. The dark army came over again. I yelled, brothers, follow me. The rebels roared and rushed out, and the close forces were connected, and the sound of swords and swords collided with each other, and the blood and yells filled the battlefield in an instant. I was at the forefront, the blade of light danced tightly, and each sword took several lives, but there were too many people on the other side. They were killed, their arms began to numb, and more wounds on their bodies. Son of Light, come and die. Gao Xiang finally locked me, and the giant sword slammed, and the black flames turned into a huge black dragon, and Zhang Yi slapped over with claws, his breathing so strong that it was suffocating. My heart was tightened and I gritted my teeth to urge the crystal. The blade of light burst out a golden splatter, slashing on the black dragon. The two forces collided together, and the explosion directly lifted me up a few meters and hit the ground. My chest almost vomited blood. That's all that ability? Gao Xiang walked over with a sneer, making the ground tremble with every step, and the black fog on his body stormed, as if he could swallow everything. I slammed and got up, feeling the heat flow of the crystal flowing wildly in my body, as if encouraging me to fight again. I gritted my teeth and grinned, ability? That's the beginning. After saying that, I suddenly rushed over, and the blade of light successively swept out several flames of light. The golden flame tried to tear his black fog defense, but Gao Xiang just slapped it with his hand, and the black flaming broke most of my attack. Then he kicked it over. I couldn't dodge and was kicked in the middle of the abdomen. He flew out and smashed into a pile of gravel, which made my eyes dark. Chen Yi! The remote rebels shouted that they wanted to save me, but Gao Xiang swung his hand and the black fog turned into countless spikes, instantly piercing a few people approaching the test map. The blood was sprayed, and the screams were so harsh that it made people feel heartbroken. I gritted my teeth and got up, feeling that my bones were almost disintegrating, but the fire in my heart was burning even more vigorously. Gao Xiang looked at me coldly, his voice was low, what's the use of slapping? The power of light is just dying slapping. Today, I want you to see your hope breaking. After saying that, his huge sword was tall and the black fog condensed into a huge black ball of light. The sacred force contained in it, and just looking at it made people's skin numb. He yelled, and the light ball rushed towards me, so fast that it could not be avoided at all. My heart suffocated and tried my best to urge the crystal. The blade of light burst out with unprecedented light. The shadow of the Guardian of Light appeared again, and it was forced to hit the front, colliding with the black ball. The explosion of the shock waves blew the stones around me into powder. I was shocked to retreat for more than 10 steps, blood was overflowing from the corners of my mouth, and the shadows became dim and almost scattered. Can you still hurt? Gao Xiang's eyes flashed with surprise, but he immediately sneered, then come again. He rushed out several black flame rages, and I gritted my teeth and forced them. Every collision made my body's internal blood storm. The injuries became heavier and heavier. The resistance army also retreated in a daze. The deaths became bigger and bigger, and the situation of the war was so bad that it could not be worse. I was desperate in my heart, how could I really fall into this? But when I thought of the state of Qingfeng village and the companions who fell along the way, I gritted my teeth and thought to myself, no, I can't fall down. At this moment, a low bird suddenly came from the temple, and then a dazzling golden light rose from the top of the temple and penetrated into the sky. Ziyuan's voice came out from it, carrying a burst of excitement, Chen Yi, the core technique has been cracked. The power of light is about to explode, ready to respond. I was delighted and finally achieved. Gao Xiang's face changed and he roared, I'm so lucky, I dare to hurt me. He turned around and wanted to rush to the temple, but how could I let him pass? I yelled, "Your opponent is me." The blade of light burst out with the last power, and the shadow of the guardian of light condensed again. I did not care about the injury and forced him to stay away. "Roll open." Gao Xiang was furious, and the giant sword slashed hard with black flames. I gritted my teeth and slammed it with the blade of light. The sword body trembled violently, and the tiger's mouth was shattered, and blood was flowing. But I was so nervous that I had only one thought in my brain: hold him up and give them time. At this moment, the golden light in the temple reached its peak, and an unparalleled power of light exploded, turning into a huge pillar of light, falling from the sky, and rushing hard into the dark army. There were countless black-armored soldiers swallowed by the pillar of light, and their voices came one after another, and Gao Xiang's troops were blown up, and the army shape was instantly in chaos. Part of the power of light rushes into my body, and my injuries begin to slowly, and the light of the blade of light is even more dazzling. I seized the opportunity and roared, "Gao Xiang, die!" The blade of light burst out with an unprecedented rage, and with the blessing of light and the power of light, it slashed hard at Gao Xiang. His face changed and he kept busy striking the slats, but the power of this blow was far beyond his imagination. The golden striking forcefully opened his black fog defense and slashed on his breastplate, making a harsh metal shattering sound. Gao Xiang hummed and took a few steps back. A deep crack appeared on his breastplate, and the black mist ejaculated from the crack, which seemed to be unscrupulous. I gasped and half-kneeled on the ground, feeling that my physical strength was almost exhausted, but when I saw Gao Xiang eating, the feeling of pleasure in my heart was bursting. "Mixed, you actually hurt me." Gao Xiang gritted his teeth and cried, his voice filled with anger, but the dark army had been rekindled by the power of light, and his military spirit was low to the bottom, and many soldiers began to retreat. He glared at me fiercely and roared, "Son of light, you are leaving today, but this battle is not over yet. Let's go." After speaking, he swung his hand and quickly retreated with the remaining troops, and his eyes disappeared into the shadow of the ancient ruins. I watched them retreat, and finally relaxed my breath. The blade of light dissipated. My body softened and I sat down to the ground. My wounds hurt so much that I lost my energy. Yu Wei and Ziyuan rushed out of the temple and saw me like this wolf, so they hurriedly supported me. With admiration in his eyes, he said, "Chen Yi, you are so fucking hard. Even Gao Xiang was beaten by you. This battle was too relieving." Ziyuan pushed the glass and said in a deep voice, "The power of light exploded too quickly, otherwise we would really not be able to hold back. However, Gao Xiang was not dead, and the Dark Army will still be back. We must recover and prepare for the last blow." I pointed and gasped, "I know, this is just a temporary victory. Gao Xiang, guy, I've been fucking him with his hands." The rebels came over, although they were injured, but their eyes were filled with hope and aspirations. Someone said in a low voice, "Son of light, we are not afraid with you." I grinned. My heart was so warm that I secretly decided, no matter how difficult it is, I have to keep going, for these people who believe in me, for the future of Elsace. As the battle gradually calmed down, the Guangming army began to clean up the battleground and treat the injured. I sat on a stone, looking down at the magic crystal in my hand. The golden light was still warm, as if telling me that the real battle was still behind. "Gao Xiang, the Dark Army, our account will be calculated clearly soon." Sitting on a broken stone in the ancient ruins, I lowered my head and looked at the magic crystal in my hand. The golden light was still warm, as if comforting my full scar. Although the battle just defeated Gao Xiang and his Dark Army, everyone knew that it was just a short breath. His eyes when he walked away were carved into my brain like a knife, telling me that this battle was not over yet. The rebels were busy treating the injured and cleaning up the battlefield. Yang Hui and Ziyuan discussed the next defense, but I knew in my heart that Gao Xiang would not give us too much time. He would definitely be back, and he would do his best. "Chen Yi, have you had a rest? We have to make a plan tightly." When Xihui walked over, her face was still covered in blood, but her eyes were sure. I clicked my head and stood up, feeling the wound still hurt, but the power of the crystal in my body was slowly renovating, which made me nervously move. I said, the plan is very simple. If you find a chance to snatch Huang Long and fuck Gao Xiang. Otherwise, if he doesn't die for a day, the Dark Army will not disperse in one day. Ziyuan pushed his eyes and said with a brow, the truth is like this, but you can see Gao Xiang's real power. He didn't even use all his strength to fight that scene. Although the power of light in the Lost Temple recreated the Dark Army, their foundation is still there. According to the information, Gao Xiang's foundation is in the dark sacrificial house deep in the temple, which is the source of the dark power. If you want to fight, you must go deep into the temple and destroy the sacrificial house, otherwise he can revive his subordinates indefinitely. Dark sacrifice? My heart sank. It was not a good place to hear, but Ziyuan said right, and dragging it on will only be even worse for us. I gritted my teeth and said, okay, then we will go to the temple, find the broken sacrificial supreme, and send Gao Xiang directly. Are the troops in resistance? Shi Wei pointed at him, although I have lost a lot, the remaining brothers are willing to fight with you to the end. With the few support troops I just contacted, I can barely create a raiding team. I uttered a sound, held the crystal tightly and said, then don't be too late. Let's take the initiative to attack while Gao Xiang has not completely reorganized the army. Let's act tonight. The rebel soldiers heard it, and they were fighting with their heads, with ambitions burning in their eyes. That night, after a simple rest, we took less than 100 people to step into the entrance of the Lost Temple again. The purpose this time is very clear, go deep into the deepest part of the temple, find the dark sacrificial house, fuck Gao Xiang, and finally end this battle. The corridor in the temple is colder than before, and there is a pungent smell of rotten smell in the air. The wall paintings on the wall look particularly strange under the reflection of torches, as if they will come to us at any time. I held the blade of light and walked in front of the team. The crystal light illuminated the way forward, but it also made the pressure in my heart grow stronger and stronger. Ziyuan said in a low voice, according to ancient books, the deepest part of the temple is the place where light and darkness intersect, and the dark sacrificial priest is there, probably Gao Xiang's nest. Be careful, his power will be infinitely magnified there. I clicked my head, but I didn't say anything, but my palms were covered in sweat. After walking for most of the time, the corridor finally reached its head, and a huge underground hall appeared in front of me. A black sacrificial fort stood in the center, radiating purple-black fog throughout the body. A huge dark crystal floated at the top of the sacrificial fort, which looked like countless twisted souls sealed, and a deep wailing sound made people feel numb. Around the sacrificial forum, hundreds of black-armored soldiers were waiting for it. Gao Xiang stood at the highest point of the sacrificial forum, with the black fog on his body being even more dense than before, as if he could swallow everything. Son of Light, I didn't expect you to come and die. Gao Xiang's voice was as low as a barracks. He waved his hand and the black-armored soldiers behind him lifted their weapons, making people breathless. I sneered and replied, send to death? You are the one who died today. Gao Xiang, our account should be calculated clearly. After speaking, I lifted the blade of light, and the golden light exploded in an instant, and the rebels even showed their weapons, and the battle was about to break out. Kill! Gao Xiang's order, the black-armored soldiers rushed over like a tide, and the long spear and giant shield formed a series of defense lines, directly rushing us to come. Jinghui shouted, dispersed and rammed, don't be surrounded. The rebels quickly scattered, and they met the black-armored soldiers in close contact. The sound of swords and swords colliding instantly touched the hall. I rushed to the fortress directly. The blade of light brought golden flames and slashed out several swords of rage, forcing a bloody path. However, the number of black-armored soldiers was too large, and they killed one after another, and soon a few more wounds were added to their bodies. Chen Yi, the dark crystal in the sacrificial fort is the key. If you destroy it, Gao Xiang's power will be weakened. Ziyuan shouted at me with magic support. I gritted my teeth and pointed my eyes, locking the dark crystal at the top of the fortress, but Gao Xiang obviously wouldn't make me easy to succeed. He snorted coldly, flashed his body, and rushed directly from the fortress. The black giant sword in his hand held a destructive black flame and slashed at me hard. "Go to die!" Gao Xiang roared, the air torn apart, and I quickly lifted the blade of light to slam. The two forces collided together. The explosion directly shook me back a few steps, and the tiger's mouth was shattered, and blood flowed out. His power was more than twice as strong as before, as if the dark sacrificial priest had given him endless blessings. I gritted my teeth and squeezed hard. The blade of light burst out with flames. The golden flame tried to tear open his black fog defense, but in one roll of black flames, I swallowed most of my attack. Then I kicked it over. I couldn't hide in time and was kicked in the chest. I flew out and hit the stone pillar, causing darkness in front of my eyes. The power of light? But that's the case. Gao Xiang sneered, and the giant drama slashed out several black flames of air. I crawled and hid, but was still rubbed against my shoulders. The wound was instantly charred, and the biting pain almost made me scream. The resistance army also retreated in the morning. Yang Hui was covered in blood and was still fighting for death. The magic of the long-lasting magic barely suppressed several attacks, but the number of black-armored soldiers and the power of darkness made us almost breathless. "Chen Yi, hold on. I'm trying to crack the sacrificial zodiac sign." Ziyuan shouted, and the stone plate in his hand lit up blue light, trying to interfere with the energy of the dark crystal. But how could Gao Xiang give him an opportunity? He swung his hand, a black fog turned into a giant python, and rushed away. I was anxious and rushed over and slashed the black fog with the blade of light. But the shot also took my energy. Gao Xiang took advantage of the opportunity to slash, and I couldn't hide at all. A deep hole was made in my chest, and blood spurted out, causing me to kneel on the ground halfway. "When you click, what's the use of slapping? Darkness will swallow everything." Gao Xiang's voice was full of mockery. He lifted a giant sword, and the black fog exploded. The dark crystal on the sacrificial fort shone brightly, and countless black shadows emerged from it, turning into new black-armored soldiers, instantly surrounding the resistance army more tightly. Yu Wei was forced into the corner by several black-armored soldiers, and Ziyuan's magic weapon was torn apart, and the situation was so bad that it could not be worse. I gasped heavily, feeling my physical strength was exhausted, and my eyes began to blur. But as my companions fell down, a burst of anger and hope came up at the same time. "Is it hard to finish this?" "No. I can't fall down." The situation of Qingfeng village, the expectations of the villagers, and the brothers who fell along the way, their faces flashed through my brain. I bit my teeth tightly and held the magic crystal tightly with my palm. Although the golden light was weak, it was still warm, as if encouraging me to stand up again. I growled, "Gao Xiang, today you either die, or I die. Come on." I stood up and the blade of light condensed again. Although the sword was shaking, his atmosphere was not weak at all. "Looking for death?" Gao Xiang was furious, and the giant sword slashed down hard with black flames. I gritted my teeth and urged the crystal. The shadow of the Guardian of the Light appeared again, and he held this blow. However, the shadow became dim in an instant, and I was shocked to retreat for a few steps, and blood was overflowing from the corners of my mouth. He sneered, and followed several black flames and slashed over, and I couldn't hide at all. I was hurting more and more, and my mind became blurred, but the belief in my heart kept me from falling down. "Chen Yi, then." At this moment, Jing Wei pinned the final force and threw a short dagger over. I caught it with my hand. Taking advantage of Gao Xiang's crack in the air, the dagger stabbed into the gap in his arm, and blood was leaking out. He hummed in pain and slowed down his attack for a moment. I seized the opportunity, and the blade of light burst out a rage and slashed on his breastplate. Although it could not break the defense, it also made him take a step back. But this injury was nothing to him. Gao Xiang's eyes were even more murderous and he roared, "I want to tear you to pieces." His black body stormed, and the dark crystal light on the fort reached the top, as if dragging the entire hall into the darkness. I felt that my body was suppressed by an invisible force, and the light of the blade of light was weakened to almost invisible. The rebels were swallowed by black fog, and their voices were getting less and less. Ziyuan and Yanhui were also trapped by the black armored soldiers, almost without the power of their hands. Ha ha ha, son of light, feel the hope. This is the truth of darkness. Gao Xiang laughed wildly. The giant sword was tall, and the black fog condensed into a huge ball of light. The sacred energy contained the power that could destroy everything, and just looking at it made people feel heartbroken. I half-kneeled on the ground, trembling with my body, feeling my vitality disappearing rapidly, but my brain suddenly flashed over Lan Xian's voice. Chen Yi, the power of light comes from the will of the heart. If you burn your will, you can transcend the limit. Burn will? I bit my tongue and forced myself to wake up. I lowered my head to look at the magic crystal in my hand. My brain was full of experiences along the way: the flames of Qingfeng village, the purity of the villagers, the days of fighting with the far-sighted spirit, the wisdom and the trust of the rebel soldiers. I can't disappoint them, and I can't let this mainland be trapped forever. I growled, Gao Xiang, go ahead and you. I fought with you today. I stood up suddenly, without ignoring the pain in my body, and focused all my thoughts on the crystal, even igniting my vitality and exerting the power to urge it. The crystal seemed to feel my determination. The golden light suddenly burst out, so dazzling that it made people unable to open their eyes. An unprecedented force burst out from the body, and the shadow of the guardian of the light recondensed, more solid than ever before, like a real warrior descending. The blade of light also evolved to the extreme, and the sword body burned with golden flames, emitting a gas that could tear the darkness. I felt every inch of flesh and blood in my body burning, and the pain was so painful that I almost lost my knowledge, but my strength was rising violently, as if I could destroy the world in one fell swoop. What is this? What? Gao Xiang's face finally changed, and there was a flash of shock in his eyes, but he was too late to stop, and the ball of light hit me hard. I roared angrily, the light finally blows, the skylight breaks. The blade of light rose high, and the guardian of light swept the sword in simultaneously with me. A golden light column that was beyond dazzling exploded from the tip of the sword, like a sharp blade that tore the world, colliding with the destruction ball of light. The explosion of the storm waves instantly swept the entire hall. Darkness and light were in a craziest struggle. A huge deep pit was blown out of the ground, the black armored soldiers were blown away by the waves, and the fort began to sway violently. I gritted my teeth and felt my vitality pass by quickly, but the power of light finally suppressed the darkness. The light column teared open the light ball and slammed on Gao Xiang. His breastplate shattered in an instant, and the black fog was burned by the golden light, in a roar of unwillingness. No! I can't get it! But the next second, the light column directly penetrated his body, and the dark crystal behind him exploded into pieces. The purple-black fog instantly dissipated, and the entire hall was covered by the golden light. Gao Xiang fell down, the black fog on his body was scattered, revealing a white and twisted face. His eyes were full of reluctance and murmured, "Dark, shouldn't, end up." Then, his body turned into a black smoke and disappeared into the golden light. The moment the dark crystal shattered, the fort collapsed, and the black-armored soldiers seemed to have lost their source of power, fell to the ground, turning into a pile of ashes. The power of darkness was shattered, and the pressure in the hall was empty, replaced by a warm breath of light. I gasped, the blade of light dissipated, the shadow of the guardian of light disappeared, the power inside was squeezed dry, and even the power standing was gone, and I sat directly on the ground. Ziyuan and Wei Hui slammed up and rushed to my side. Wei Hui's eyes were filled with purgation, and he choked and said, "Chen Yi, you really fucked Gao Xiang. We won." Ziyuan pushed the glass, and his voice shook. "The dark sacrificial sutra has been destroyed, and the dark army has finally finished. Chen Yi, you are the real son of light." I grinned, feeling my eyelids were so heavy that I murmured, "It's good to win. I have to sleep, don't quarrel with me." Before I finished speaking, my mind fell into darkness and finally passed. When I woke up again, I was already lying in a simple business account, and my wound was covered. Although it still hurts, I could at least move. Xiaowei sat next to me and saw me wake up. Lima said, "It's considered to be awake. You've been sleeping for 3 days and you've scared us to death." I snatched my head and asked, "How is the battle? The Dark Army really has no Dark Army?" Ziyuan walked in and said, "No, Gao Xiang died, the Dark Army was headless, the remaining troops fled and scattered, and the rebels from all over the country have begun to clear out the slaughter. The power of light has recaptured Elsace, and the poisonous fog and dark marks are fading. We have won a lot of money." When I heard this, the big stone in my heart finally landed on the ground, and I sighed and said, "That's good, it's not a waste of my life." A few days later, my injuries were almost the same. I stood on a small hill near Qingfeng village with Ziyuan and Yang Hui, looking at the vast land far away. The land that had been swallowed by darkness is reviving, greenness is coming out a little, the sky is blue, and there is no longer the pressure in the air. Chen Yi, you are a hero from the mainland now. People call you the Son of Light wherever you go. What should you do? Where do you plan to enjoy your happiness?" Xiaowei asked half-jokingly. I snatched my head and smiled. "Enjoy happiness? I never thought about it. I plan to go back to Qingfeng village, rebuild my home, and then guard this land, so as not to give darkness a chance to regain the soil." Ziyuan said, "I will continue to study magical mortars to help you protect this vast land. Although darkness is defeated, light needs to be maintained for a long time." I lowered my head and looked at the magic crystal in my hand. The golden light was still warm, as if I had witnessed the end of all this. I looked up at the horizon in the distance, and my heart was filled with scent, but more of satisfaction and hope. Elsa's mainland finally welcomed a new life, and I, Chen Yi, the guy who was once just a woodcutter, finally fulfilled my mission and became the true Son of Light. "Let's go home." I turned around and walked towards Qingfeng village. Ziyuan and Yanhui followed behind. The sun was shining on us, and the shadows were the eldest. At this moment, I knew that no matter what challenges I had in the future, I would not retreat again, because these people in this land are worth my life to protect.